aren't you?
Yeah, I am.
So, could you tell us what the cardiovascular system is?
Cardiovascular system, well, has to do something with the heart and pumping blood throughout the body.
The cardiovascular system is part of the circulatory system. By distributing blood throughout the body, it helps bring oxygen to parts of the body and take carbon dioxide away from parts of the body. It also helps to exchange nutrients and waste, other nutrients and waste, fight disease, maintain body temperature, and maintain pH.
Alright, could you explain some of the structures of the cardiovascular system?
The heart.
Yeah,
There's
the heart is definitely part of the cardiovascular system.
wait, and the arteries are pretty important.
Alright,
And the veins.
The lower intestine.
I don't know.
so what's the difference between arteries and veins?
Arteries take blood away from the heart, and veins bring blood to the heart.
The main components of the cardiovascular system are the heart, blood, and the blood vessels. The heart pumps the blood through the blood vessels. The blood vessels include arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries carry the blood away from the heart to the rest of the body, and they usually carry oxygenated blood. Veins carry blood to the heart, and this blood is usually deoxygenated. Capillaries are networks of very thin blood vessels. This is usually where substance exchanges take place.
So, how do you guys think the heart regulates the beating?
Tiny little clock.
Like an actual clock?
A real clock.
I don't think that's it.
Okay, how does the heart keep the pace of the beating?
It pumps. Is there like a metronome in the heart? When you
Blood
breathe,
is rushing through your heart to make it pump.
The heart has to regulate its beating, and it does that because although some of the heart muscle cells will rhythmically contract by themselves, something must make all of the cells contract and relax at the same time. A part of the heart in the wall of the atrium, called the sinoatrial node, or pacemaker, has this job. It generates electrical impulses similar to those of nerve cells. The impulse spreads throughout the left and right atria and causes them to contract at the same time. This impulse travels through the atrioventricular node. The signal is slightly delayed and then spreads and causes the ventricles to contract. So the sinoatrial node regulates all of the heart's beating, and it is regulated by two nerves from the brain.
Could you explain the path of blood flow throughout the cardiovascular system?
Well, oxygenated blood is pumped, I think. Never taken an anatomy class, but I think it's like oxygenated blood is pumped from the heart to like the extremities through veins or something.
Deoxygenated blood flows into the right atrium of the heart and then into the right ventricle. Here, the pulmonary artery carries the blood away to the lungs to pick up oxygen. After being oxygenated, the pulmonary vein carries the blood back to the heart, where it enters the left atrium and then left ventricle. Here, the blood leaves the heart through the aorta to flow to the rest of the body. The blood will eventually flow into a smaller artery called an arteriole and then into a bed of capillaries. The exchange will take place, and then the blood flows into a small vein called a venule and eventually into a vein. The blood is transported back to the heart for reoxygenation.
What happens in an open circulatory system?
The person bleeds out.
What's an open circulatory system and why is it important?
Because it's open. It lets your blood flow.
Yeah.
Something about blood.
Yeah.
You know what? It's important because it takes blood to your lungs. And
Yeah.
Stuff.
Essentially, in regards to an open system, the students were right. The blood does go out, but not in the way that most of them were probably thinking. The blood leaves the blood vessels and really becomes the same as the interstitial fluid. The blood bathes the organ and exchanges directly with the body's cells. This is different from the closed circulatory system. of humans and other vertebrates. In a closed system, the blood does not leave the blood vessels. It exchanges with the interstitial fluid, which is separate from the blood. Then the interstitial fluid exchanges with the body cells. So while the students may have been right, having an open circulatory system doesn't mean that you will bleed out and die.
What are the advantages of a closed circulatory system?
Blood doesn't spill out.
Closed circulatory systems allow for higher blood pressure, which is more effective for meeting the high metabolic demand of large active animals. For example, the body of an exercising human needs a lot of oxygen, so the heart must be able to pump a lot of oxygenated blood to it efficiently. Open circulatory systems have their advantages too. They are less costly to the organism to build and maintain because they have less extensive blood vessel networks and lower hydrostatic pressure. So if an organism does not need the power of a closed circulatory system, it is better to only build an open circulatory system. For example, mollusks have open circulatory systems, but the larger and more active squids and octopi have developed closed systems. Some animals have developed circulatory systems that are intermediate between open and closed. Arthropods all have open systems, but large crustaceans have a more developed system of vessels and an accessory pumping organ that increases blood pressure.
Why can't large animals depend on diffusion?
Diffusion because it's slow.
Define diffusion.
In regard to Anna's question, diffusion is when particles move from higher concentration to lower concentration. And the reason that large animals can't depend on diffusion is because it's too slow to go over large distances. They need to be able to transport to local areas where substance can then diffuse. Only extremely small animals can circulate substances through diffusion effectively. So essentially, Richard was right. There are some other ways of structuring the circulatory system too. The mammalian heart has two circuits, or loops, of blood flow. The pulmonary circuit loops the blood through the lungs, while on the systemic circuit, the blood loops through the body. Fish have only one circuit in their system. The blood must pass through the lungs on the way to the rest of the body. Since it must pass through a set of capillaries in each location, it slows down and limits the metabolic rate of fish. Although the mammalian heart has four chambers, the left and right atria, and the left and right ventricles, the left and right sides are separated by a septum. Fish have only two chambers, one atrium and one ventricle. Amphibians have three chambers. They have a second atrium. Reptiles have the same four chambers as mammals, but the two sides are not completely separate, so the oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood sometimes mix.
How many times per minute do you think the heart beats?
14 and a half, I think.
How many times per minute do you think the heart beats?
Alright. I would say at least once per second, maybe twice. So I'm going to say around 100.
A normal heart rate for an adult is anywhere between 60 and 100 beats per minute.
Is the heart a muscle or an organ?
Clearly
Muscle.
muscle.
Definitely a muscle.
How about it?
I think it's an organ.
You were a cardiac physiologist.
Well, she could think it's an organ
They
because
did
it has
both.
specialized tissues which made up themselves.
But it's a muscle.
The heart is actually a muscular organ, so it's both.
Organ
They
because
did
it has
both.
specialized tissue.
It is an organ made from muscular tissue.